Hi and welcome to this video tutorial on using Slider Revolution 5 to create multi-animated slides. Now this is an update to the very popular video that I released last year, and this is going to give you the latest version of Slider Revolution version 5 and all of the updates that are included in this. So if this is the first time you've ever used Slider Revolution and you want to build up multi-layered animated slides, then this is a great video. And if you want a refresher on anything that was covered in the previous version, then this is going to be the video for you as well. So let's take a look at exactly how we can create these multi-image, multi-layered slides inside Slider Revolution 5. Okay, so we're in the admin of WordPress, and as you can see, I've got Slider Revolution 5 open in front of me, and I'm ready to start working, start creating our first slider. So what I'm going to do is give it a click on New Slider. That will then take us through, and we can set the basic settings for this particular slider. Now I'm going to keep this very simple in this video. I'm focusing on how to create multiple different layers to create a slide with multiple animated elements. Obviously, if you want to create a more complex slider or you want to create multiple sliders, the principles are going to hold true. Now, if you want to sort of get a really good understanding of all the different things you can do in Slider Revolution 5, then I'll link through to the playlist on the channel that has all of the videos now and anything in the future. So check that out if you really want to get down and dirty with exactly what you can do with this. Like I say in this video, we're going to keep it pretty simple. So default slider is fine. We're going to come down and we're going to name this slider multi. We're going to give it an alias of multi as well, so we know exactly what we're working with. Standard slider is fine, or in this example, we're going to use a hero scene because I'm only going to create one slide. We can then go through and choose the type of slider that we want. I'm going to keep this simple and say I want to have full width, and I'm going to set this to be 650 pixels high. So everything's done. I'm good to go. So we're going to come up, click on Save Settings, and that'll take us through now. We can start building up this slider. So, as you can see at the moment, we've got a blank slide, and if we scroll down to the main area, you can see nothing's in there, just complete transparency. So what we're going to do for this video is we're going to come down, we're going to choose a solid color for the background, and I'm going to set that to a very light gray. So that gives us our background to work with. And if we take a look at these sort of blue serrated lines, that gives us the width and the height of the slider that we've set up and configured. So even though it's full width, the only thing that will actually take up full width is the background element. Any of the elements we put on top of that, in this case the animated elements, need to be built inside this serrated line area. And that's where our sort of window of opportunity, as it were, is all set up for this particular slide. So once we've done that, let's go and put some of the basic building blocks that we're going to use. Now, when you want to create a multi-layer slider in Slider Revolution 5, the easiest way of doing this is to come down to the Add Layer option, and you can see in there we've got a whole range of different types of layers that we can use. We can drop text or HTML code in there, image, audio, video, and so on. So for this first thing, we're going to come down and we're going to choose an image. So we're going to click on that. That'll take us through to our media browser, and all of the images we currently have uploaded are displayed inside there. Now, if you don't have the image that you want to work with uploaded, then simply drag and drop that into this window, or alternatively come up to Upload Files, click on Select Files, and find the files on your computer. Select those, upload them, so you've got them in your media library. I've already done that, and you can see the three elements I'm going to work with for this starting point is the keyboard, the mouse, and a cup of coffee. So let's start off with the coffee. We'll click on that. Now this is a transparent PNG, so the shadow and the image itself, doesn't matter what color's underneath it or any images underneath it, which is why we chose that particular gray color without being specific. That's going to see through the image itself. So that works great, so we'll just click Insert and that'll drop that in there. Now if we find this is a little bit too big, we can resize it inside Slider Revolution, and I would always say set the image to the size that you want to work with to save any valuable sort of speed of loading, but for this example I'm not too bothered because I'm working on my local host. So, as I said at the beginning of this video, where we've got the serrated lines on the right and left hand side, I want to make sure that any image that I'm working with and I want to animate in and include in my slide has to be inside that. Now, I can drop this over like so because nothing on the right hand side of this image is going to be obscured. On the left hand side would be different. So if I took it over to this side, we'd lose this shadow and the edge of the mug, it would all be cut off. So bear that in mind when you're creating this. You don't have this entire area, you only have what's inside these blue lines. So we'll take this over to the right hand side and we'll drop it in there. That looks pretty good. If I want to be exact about the positioning, you can see I can specify the X and Y coordinates of this particular element. I can even control the width and the height of the element itself. So if I wanted to change that to a specific size, I can do that. And you can see if I drag the corners up, you can see it automatically resizes and shows me the height and width. The little padlock icon here says that we're constraining the proportions. So if I did this, you can see it doesn't matter how wobbly or how much I shake that around, it's constraining the proportions. If I uncheck that and I make any alterations to it, that will now stretch it and skew it and go kind of crazy. So we don't want that, obviously. So I'll press Ctrl Z to undo that, and I'll make sure that that padlock is locked. So we've got the image where we want it to start off with. So that's the first thing. No animations or anything. It's just placed on the slide. So let's go in and choose the other objects. So come down to the same again. We'll go to image. We'll choose this time the keyboard. We'll insert that. Roughly position that where I want. The size is looking pretty good, so that's fine. And we'll do the same again now. Come down image and we'll grab the mouse. And we'll pretend for this example that I'm left-handed. And as you can see, the mouse is a little on the large side compared to the keyboard. So let's just shrink that down to a more realistic size. I haven't got giant hands, so that's looking pretty good. So we've got the basic building blocks are all laid out on our screen. If I wanted to rotate these, I can easily do that by coming up to the top right hand corner with a little rotation circle with an arrow on the end of it, and we can drag that around so we can position that as we want. So I can have a little bit of motion in it, a little bit of action, what I want to do, and I can reposition these anywhere I want. Now what happens when we do this is you can see if we scroll down, we've got a timeline below, and this shows us the 4 different elements that make up our current slide. Right at the top, we've got the background. Now at the moment, we don't have anything on there, it's just a color. But if we had a background on there, we can control various different elements like the fade, the duration of the fade, and so on. Underneath that, you can see we now have the 3 elements we put on there. Image 1, 2, and 3. Doesn't really make much sense what they mean, and we'll rename those in a second. Next up, we've got the duration and the transition duration. So you can see at the moment the transition duration is set by default to 300 milliseconds. We can change that by simply coming up to the right hand side. You can see we go from a 4-headed arrow that allows us to move things around to a 2-headed arrow that allows us to stretch that out and change it. So we can change the duration of the animation on there without any problem. But we'll take a look at how we can do that in a little bit more intricate detail later on. And we can reposition these so we can just drag those over anywhere we want to control when those particular elements start to show up on our slide. So we can animate the different elements in at different times, so one will come on a second, a third, or they'll all come on together. So that's the basics of how we can control those animation elements. You can see we've also got the drag me. So when we've created the different animations, we can then come in and we can scrub this across like you can with any kind of animation tool, and you'll see exactly what these different elements will animate in like. So you can see as we go along, even though we don't have any physical animation, we do have the fade transition set up on this. So as I drag that over, you'll see that we start off, the background will be transparent, everything is missing. As we scrub that over, they all start to come into existence as they come through to 100% opacity. So, pretty easy. Now then, now we've done that, let's go through and name each of these items so when we're animating them, we know exactly which one is which, because image 1, 2, and 3 doesn't really say much. So let's just change these so we can see that image 1 is the coffee, image 2 is the keyboard, and image 3 is the mouse. So let's name those so we can give them some kind of sense. All you need to do, double click, and we'll say coffee, keyboard, and finally we've got mouse. Okay, so we've named those. We now have some order and some sense to our slides. So next up, let's start animating these different elements and seeing how we can set those basics of the animation up. So if we scroll up to the top of our screen, we've got a whole range of different options in these tabs. Now at the moment, it all looks pretty simple and pretty straightforward. We have style selected, we can jump over to animation, loop, visibility, behavior, and so on. And each one of those has context information in there that allows us to set things up. But style has a lot more options than you may think in this. So you can come in if you want to and click the arrow, and you can see we've got a whole range of different things we can do in there, rotation, perspective, and so on, the different style elements. And this is geared towards primarily text. So we're not going to worry too much about that for this particular part of the video. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail later on. For now, we're going to come into the animation section, and you can see we've got a pretty simple animation setup. We've got the starting animation and we've got the ending animation, or in other words, the in animation and the out animation. So you can see at the moment, fade in is set to be the animation at the beginning, and nothing is set for the out transition. And if you take a look, our screen, because this is the active element, we've got the animation tab available and open. It's showing us what this is going to look like and the amount of time it's going to take for that animation to take effect. Now, we can come in and we can choose a different animation template. So if we click on there, we've got a whole range of different animation templates that we can call upon. So we could say, let's go short from right. And you can see that now flies in very quickly from the right-hand side. We could do exactly the same and say, let's go for long from top. And that will slowly transition, or quickly transition, I should say, straight in from the top of the screen. You can see we've also got some easing options on this. We've got a whole range of different easing. Now, easing basically means how the animation starts or how the animation ends. So you could have a sort of slow transition where some speed is built up, or the opposite effect takes effect, as it were. So in other words, it comes in very quickly and then slows down just before the end of the animation, or it does the opposite and pick up momentum, which starts off slowly and speeds up during the animation. So you can control a whole range of that by clicking on this and choosing all of the different options. I'd recommend with stuff like this, try it out, see what it looks like. Next up, we've got the animation speed in milliseconds. So at the moment, this is set to 300 milliseconds. And if you remember, down on the animation timeline, I said we've got the 300, which we can control and adjust if we want to. Well, we can do it in two ways. We can come up to the top, we can control the animation in speed or the animation out speed using these different sections. Or we can come down and we can drag these over. So let's just take a look. If I say I don't want this to be quite so quick, let's just say we want to set that to 600 milliseconds. Click on there. That now slows the animation down. And if we take a look at the bottom, you can see the animation duration now has been increased. And at the end, you can see we've got 300. So if we come down to the end of it and change this to 600, you'll see the out transition is 600 and set on there. So that's the basics of setting up animation to start off with. Now you see we've got a couple of other options available to us. You can see at the moment we've got no split and we've got animation delay. Now these are basically aimed at dealing with certain text animations. So you can specify how the animation is going to be split. So you can see you've got no split, character based, word based or line based. So if you've got an animation that affects either characters, words or lines, you can control exactly what they work with. And then you've got the option for the animation delay between any of the split elements. So how long it takes for each of those different split elements to be animated. So you can increase or decrease that. At this point, they're not going to make any effect on what we're dealing with because these don't have those particular parameters applicable. So there's the basics of how we can animate these elements in. So what we're going to do next is we're going to animate each one of these in to give it a nice sense of motion for the beginning of our slider. So let's check that out. Okay then, so let's start off by animating these different elements. Let's take the animation off this a second. Let's move that out of the way. Deselect that item so it's not the selected item. Now then, so let's come down and let's work with the keyboard first of all. So, all we need to do is specify the type of animation we want to work with. Now you see by default it's going through and showing us the fade animation, which is fine, but I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to create an animation where this slides down from the top of the screen. So let's come to this and we'll say, let's try short from top. So that now animates that down from the top of the screen. That's looking pretty good, but I might want to make it a little bit slower. So let's just say I want this to be 600 milliseconds. So there's our animation to start off with. So there's our first animation. Now, I don't want these other two elements to animate in at exactly the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to move those items on the timeline. So we've got the keyboard, that's the first item I want to come on there. Then I want to have the mouse. Then I want to have the coffee cup. So what I can do is I can grab this and I can move it over. And you can see as I move it over, it gives me a little indication of the time in milliseconds that the offset is. So at the moment, that's a 300 millisecond offset. And we've got a 600 millisecond animation. That's pretty good. I like that. And then finally, I want to bring the coffee in as the last item. So I want that to have a 600 millisecond preceding item, and we're going to set this to be 600 milliseconds as well. So you can see I can do it in multiple different ways on how I want to do this. So now if I scrub through, even though I haven't set the animations for the other ones just yet, you'll see that first of all the keyboard animates on, next up the mouse will animate on, and finally the coffee cup. So we've now set up the animations, and we can tweak those to our heart's content to get exactly what we want where we want it. So let's come back up and let's do the same again. So let's just say for this one, I want this to be short from left. And this one, I want to be short from right. So they're going to animate in from different sides of the screen. So short from right. So there we go. So we're going to hit save now just to make sure that all these changes are saved so we can make sure that we don't lose anything if we make any mistakes. So we'll click on save that. We've now set that. Now the only thing I want to do is adjust. Actually, I've already done it. I want to make sure that all the durations are the same for how long it takes that animation to come on. So there's our 3 elements. We can move those around now if we wanted to adjust their proportions and relationships to each other. So at the moment that looks a little bit big. That's a massive coffee cup. So let's just change the scale of that. So there's our coffee cup animated on. So again, let's just save that. And let's take a look at a preview. So if we click on preview, we can see there's the 3 different elements all animating on screen as we expect them to. So that's pretty good. I like where that's going. I want to move these around though a little bit because I want to make some space for some other things. So let's just move those up. Move the keyboard up a little bit. Move that over a little bit. Okay, so there's the basics. We'll hit save just to make sure, and we'll test that out again with the preview just to make sure everything is all on screen. There we go. That's looking pretty good. So we've done the basics. Now let's go through and add some extra elements and take a look at how we can take this one step further by moving on to objects or information that is not image based. Okay, so let's take a look now how we can add different elements in. So we've done images. So let's come up and choose add a layer, and let's just say text HTML. So we'll just put some information into here. Now I'm just going to use a little bit of filler text in this, so we'll just put that in there, some lorem ipsum, and we'll click OK to that. So you can see that's now put the text in there for us. But we've got a couple of problems, a couple of issues with that at the moment. 1, it's all on one line. 2, it's white. 3, it's fading in the animation. So everything's just a little bit in the wrong side. So let's just change all that. First of all, let's specify that we don't want this to be one single line. We want it to be a block of text. We want it to wrap as we see fit. So let's just roughly resize that. Reposition it roughly where I want. So now we can go in and we can change some information. So let's jump over to the style section, and from there we can go in and specify how this text works on screen. So we've got all the different formatting options, and we'll jump back into those in a moment. What we're looking for is the auto line break on and off. So if we click on this T, you can see that now puts a line break in there and drops it so it's all in one block of text. So as we resize this, it will drop down to the next line to make sure it fits into the size of the box that we've created. Now if you want to get specific about the size of the box, you can do that with the width. So let's just say we want this to be 600 pixels wide. We don't mind the height because obviously that needs to be auto to allow it to wrap to the next line. So there's the first issue. We've dealt with that. We've got that all sorted out. So the next thing we need to do now is go in and control the way the text looks. So we can just select the text, make sure we've got that active, and we can come in now. We can choose from any of the predefined options, and you can see there are a ton of different options. So we can easily come down there, click. It'll then change that, load the style in, and style it accordingly, which is fine if you want to use that as a starting point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to control all that myself. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down. Railway is fine. We'll leave that as the font type. But I don't want any background colors, and I want to change the text color. So I'm going to choose the color of the text. We're going to set that to... let's just move that back up. Select that. So we're going to change that to be a pretty dark grey. So that's looking pretty good. Maybe a little darker. Okay, so there's the first part. So we click back on that. That's set. So next thing we need to do is just get rid of that black background. So if we just come over and we just expand this out and we say background, we can now set that to be clear. So we can get rid of that completely. So there's our text, just the text, no background color. We can specify a whole range of different things in here. We can set background color, background transparency, we can background image, whole range of different things. And I've covered this in its own dedicated video. So let's just jump back over to this font. Let's just go through and set some parameters up now. So font height, that's fine. Font size, let's just say we want the font line spacing to be a little bit bigger. I want to make sure that this is aligned to the center. So there's the first part of it. If I want to position the text in the middle, I can do that. I can come over to the different options we've got available to us, and you can see we've got spaces, and I can come down and I can choose the alignment. So at the moment this is set to left. Let's say we want that in the center. So there's our center aligned text. We can even control how the text is affected if we take the mouse over it. So we're going to have an idle and we're going to have a hover state on there, which is great if you want to make these into links. So there's the basics of that. Now the one thing I've noticed is that my text is centered, but my keyboard isn't in line with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the keyboard and center that. So I now know that the text and the keyboard are nicely aligned with each other. So everything's going to look just a little bit nicer and neater. Now once I've done that, I can easily come over to this text and I can choose exactly what I want this to sort of do when it comes onto screen. So I can come to the animation and we can now control this the same as we did everything else. So you can see we've got caption text 4 in this example. We can name that whatever we want. We want to set the duration of the transition to be the same as everything else, 600 milliseconds. And we want this to come on last of all. So we'll set that around about 900 milliseconds. Should be good. So we now need to tell it what type of animation we want. So let's have this one now come in from the bottom of the screen. So let's just come up and we'll say we want this to be short from bottom. And that will scroll up from the bottom. So there's the basics of that. We're going to do one more thing and we're going to come in, we're going to say add a new layer and we're going to say we want to add a button. So we're going to click on button and we can now choose the button style that we want. So we could choose from any of these, click on them and that'll add the button in there straight away for us. So let's just get rid of that a second. So we just click on it, make sure select it, and we can hit the trash can. So that'll get rid of it. So we got rid of that. So let's do that again. Let's come back in and we're going to say we want to have a button. And now what we can do is if we want, we can use all these options on the right hand side to change various different elements. So we can change the background color. So we can set that if we wanted to be clear. We could then set the border color to be, in this example, let's leave that almost black. And we'll set that to be, yeah, that's fine. We'll leave that as it is. And we can go through and deal with the hover states and so on. So you've got a whole range of different things you can do with this. You just choose the different kind of button that you want. So I'm not going to be too picky about it. I'm going to say we're going to have this one. We'll click on that. We'll roughly position it where I want. We'll do the same as we've done before, which is position it specifically. So we can click back on style, hit the align center. And we now know that these three elements, the center point of everything, is all focused in the dead center. So there we go. So there's the basics of those animations. So let's come down now and just set the button up as we want it to be. So again, 600 milliseconds, and we're going to offset that round about that point. I'm not going to be too picky about it. So we can scrub through this and see exactly what everything's going to look like. So the only thing we need to do finally is set the animation type on this. So we're going to come up and we're going to specify, let's go to the animation, I should say. Come back to that and we're going to do exactly the same again, which is short from bottom. So this is going to come up with the text itself. So there we go. So let's hit save on that. And we've now created 5 different elements, all with different types of animations and all with different settings and parameters. And everything is going to be animated in one after the other to give it a nice, smooth sort of flow to the whole animation setup. So what we're going to do finally is we're going to take a look at how you can customize the animations one step further. So you can create your own sort of bespoke animations, even though you may start off with a preset animation setup. We can configure that ourselves. So let's take a look at that next. So for this, I want to work with the text we created. So I'm going to select that first of all. So we've now got that as the active layer, the active element. Now, if we come over to the animation, we're going to deal with the in animation, because at this particular slide, because we're dealing with a hero slider, it's going to come on screen, animate all the different elements on and stay on screen. So we don't need to worry about an exit animation, which is why I haven't worried about those. But what we're going to do is we're going to come in and customize the way that this animation works for the in section. So what we're going to do is come over to the advanced settings, which is the plus symbol. Click on that. You can see that opens up a whole range of new parameters. We can customize this short from bottom template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up for this example to the filters. And this first option is a blur. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to be a 10 pixel blur. I press enter. And what that's going to do is at the beginning of the animation, it's going to blur. And when the animation finishes, it's going to be fully in focus. So if you take a look at the animation now. It starts off slightly blurred. Let me slow that down a little bit so we can see exactly what's going on. Set that to 1200 milliseconds. And you should now be able to see that that blur comes in at the beginning of it. So you can see now that's changed from the short from bottom and it's created custom animation. If I wanted to save that, I can easily hit the little disk icon. I can now save as, and we'll say this is short from bottom blur. So I've now created my own preset from that. So that'll save it. That now becomes available to me on this particular installation of Slider Revolution, and I can call that up at any time I want and use that as a predefined preset inside Slider Revolution. So let's take a quick look at what all we've been working on looks like on the front page of the website, so we can see exactly how this animates and exactly what it looks like when it's put onto the page itself. So I'm just going to jump over to my test page. You see all the elements are on this, so I'll just refresh this so we can see exactly how all the animations work. And there you go. Pretty cool, pretty effective, and very, very easy to set up. It's all based around some simple timeline management where we can adjust the duration of different elements. We can set exactly when we want those to come in, and we can control every aspect of it. Well, there we go. That's what I wanted to show you in this updated version of the multi-animated slider for Slider Revolution 5. I've taken you through the basics, showed you the timeline, showed you how to create animations, how to drop different elements in there, and we've taken that one step further and taken a look at how we can do some more advanced things inside the way that we work with animations, and we can add some custom presets and save those out. Well, I hope you found the video useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of the new content we add every single week. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback on this video, please pop those in the comment section below. And until next time, take care.